Thank you guys for joining me today. I got something good for you that I think you'll really enjoy. Little project I got going on. You know, I'm 3 weeks away from hunting season opening here in Alabama, and I kind of had a goal in mind of building the absolute most perfect arrow that I could build for my setups. Guys, when you get close to hunting season, you start really thinking about every little detail of your equipment, right? Well, the arrow and the broadhead is no doubt the most important part of your entire setup. I mean, if your bow's shooting good, bow's going to do the same thing every time you shoot it. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to actually taking game, the arrow and the broadhead are far more important than any other part of it. They are. So my focus has been on penetration and speed, hard hitting. So I went through all this mass of arrows that I have. I've tinkered with all kinds of setups, and I shared my final choice in an earlier video for my 2022 going into this year's bow season, my setup, and that choice was, of course, the Gold Tip Airstrike. And I chose that setup for a reason, because I just by chance tested some shafts that I had, and the performance just completely blew everything away. Not even a comparison, guys. It just wasn't. Nothing could really be compared to it in broadhead flight. These shafts just tended to shoot a broadhead flatter and faster and more consistent than any shaft that I tried. I'm not saying that there's not plenty of other ones like it, but it's the type of shaft. And there's a reason that these things happen, guys. So I thought, okay, if I'm getting that good a performance out of them, I want to push it to the limits. I want to build the highest FOC arrow that I can get by with for the most penetration possible out of my bows, and yet not sacrifice trajectory, okay? So that was my goal. And I set out to build what I would think would be probably 20 to 25% FOC arrow, okay? Well, I wound up with 25. I got a 25% FOC arrow, weighing in a little over 630 grains. This is the arrow that I'll be shooting out of a 50-pound recurve. Okay, 50-pound bow, 630 plus grain arrow that shoots ultra flat and hits like an absolute tank. I mean, it's incredible what this arrow is doing. So I'm going to show it to you guys and show you how this build goes and what I'm doing for what I call the ultimate arrow build. And I promise you, it's going to be hard to beat. It's going to be hard to beat. Okay. This is the arrow, guys. I want to show you the finished product here. This is the arrow. And I went with a 340. A 340 from a 50-pound bow. The reason I chose a 340, and if you see these little marks here, this is my balance point here that I have. I did all the calculations on my FOC. This is center, and this is balance point. This is a full 25% FOC arrow. Okay, this arrow is balancing right here on my little balance point. Right there it is, guys. You can see it. She's balanced out right there with 335 grains up front. That's right, 335. 175 grain head and 185 grains worth of insert. I'm going to show you the insert system and a little bit about this arrow. Now, I'm running Luminox on these, so I took the factory colors off. When you buy Gold Tip Airstrikes, they come with, I'll show them to you guys. They come with a pack like this that has their shot color and a little ultralight inserts. The nocks come with a little ballistic collar for your nock. These aluminum collars do not work with Luminox. They do not. So you can the factory nock and put Luminox, which would be an X nock, if that's what you want to run, or you can leave these. Now these are great if you're going to run the stock factory Gold Tip nocks with them. I don't. I like a Luminox on everything that I shoot because I like lighted nocks. Okay, but anyway, this arrow finishing out, turn my scales on, I'll give you the exact weight of this arrow here. This is the 340 to be shot out of this bow. 50-pound recurve. And it is absolutely bullet straight. I have bare shafted these before I even fletched them with this setup, and it's perfect. 632 grains, 632.8, 632.8, okay? Plenty of weight for my bow, okay? So 632 grain arrow, and 335 grains of that being up front. That's 25% FOC arrow, guys. 25%. That's where the penetration comes in, and that's why this arrow is so deadly. So in other words, I expect to pass through on about anything. I really do. It's going to be hard to beat. Now, I have a 45-pound longbow. 45-pound longbow that I decided I wanted to do this exact same setup for this longbow. But I've got to go a little different because it's 5 pounds lighter. So I chose a 400. And I've already got one of those finished, and I got something I'm going to show you how I'm doing this build-up, guys. Okay, here it is. For the 45-pound longbow, I went with the Gold Tip Airstrike in a 400. Same setup, but a different weight. It is the same system, the Ethics system, but it's a different weight. And I'm going to show you guys what's different about them. And before that, I'll give you my total arrow weight on this one. 580 grains on the nose, 580. That's a 580.6, okay? So I have a 580 grain finished arrow for a 45-pound bow. These are in a 400 shafts, 400 spines, 340s for my recurve, okay? Which is a 50-pound bow. So these 400s tested out perfect with the Ethics system, but not quite as heavy. The ones that I chose to run on the 400s, being that they were just a little bit different, I'm going to show you guys what you get here, and I'll show you the packs. Okay, when you buy the Ethics systems, you get a choice. You get a choice of a stainless steel insert and an aluminum collar. Okay, you either get stainless and aluminum this way, or you get stainless and aluminum this way, which would be the reverse. Aluminum post, stainless sleeve. Okay, complete opposites, different weights. Show you the pack. In other words, and you can buy these through Three Rivers, or you can get them through Ethics, either one. But right here, this pack that I have in my hand, and they come with 3 of them in it, are the stainless steel post with an aluminum collar. Okay, and for these gold tips, I went with the 262s because it's just a hair bigger than the outside diameter of these shafts. Okay, you got to go a little bit bigger to have room for the glue. But these here, this particular setup that I have, these weigh a combined 185 grains. You have the stainless post is 160. You add the collar, 185 on the head. So this is what I'm running in the 340s, because this is a total of 185 grains right here. So you take 185 grain insert and 175 grain broadhead, you have 335 grains up front. That's what's in these arrows here. Now for my 400s, for the 45-pound bow, I am running I'll show you what one of these looks like. This one here is aluminum. It's an aluminum post with a stainless steel collar, which weigh 120 grains, okay? So the lighter ones being 120 grains, which is still a lot of weight for an insert system. 120 grains is plenty. Most people run 100 grain brass or whatever. But I chose to run this setup in my 400s with a 200 grain broadhead, which still gives me 320 grains. 15 grains less than this setup. That's what I went with, guys. Same arrow length. Now you may ask, okay, well Jeff, what arrow length did you cut? Okay, what I did, when I got these arrows out of the box, fresh out of the box. You have to remember, when you put these inserts on, your insert goes all the way down, but the sleeve system is a 1/2 inch longer. It's a 1/2 inch longer than your shaft. In other words, the shaft goes up into this collar or sleeve, whatever you want to call it, 3/4 of the way. Okay, so my draw length being 27.5 inches, I actually cut my shafts 28.5. I cut them 1 inch longer, and that gave me another 1/2 inch on top of that. So that gives me 1.5 inches at my fullest draw that I can. And I did that for a reason. You can go longer if you want to. But the way my bows are designed and my shelves are designed, the arrow rides practically on your finger. You can just, if you position your hand just right, you can almost drag the arrow on your finger. And this is my trigger. I did it in another video. I've got an older video called an amazing discovery. And that's where one day I discovered that my little trigger was this. When I felt that touch my finger or roll right across it, that let me know that I was at full draw. And on my setup, that's exactly how these arrows are. When I'm hooked and I draw, and in my full draw, I barely feel that sleeve come across my finger, and I'm there. It's just like a trigger mechanism for me, if you will. It's kind of like my clicker. So that's why I only cut my shafts 1 inch longer. Then I add these, so it gives me 1.5 inches full, which is more than enough room for broadhead clearance for my hand at my fullest draw. Now you may want to go 2 inches longer or whatever. If you're a gap shooter, you're going to want to go longer than that so that you can use the tip of the arrow for an aiming point. But I'm shooting strictly instinctive, shooting split finger. I don't need any of that. This is just kind of a little goodie trick for me. So anyway, on these 400s that I'm building for my 45-pound bow, I cut my shafts and I glued these things in. And guys, and I'll show you the easiest way to glue these. You don't have to do anything extravagant, and I'm even going to cue you in on the best glue there is on the market, bar none, that will not pull out, but you can heat it and adjust. If you're kind of one of the guys that wants to adjust his broadhead, maybe if you're shooting a 2-blade head and you want it horizontal or you want it vertical or whatever, and you want to be able to heat it and move it, you can do that with this setup. You can also spin test them. If you get one that has a hair of wobble, maybe you didn't get something just perfectly straight, you can barely heat this thing and you can actually spin it. You can spin it on the table until it is perfect, like this, guys, see? Where you have 0 wobble. I mean nothing, no wobble at all. That's when your heads are going to fly perfectly, when they do not have any wobble in them. So this heating system I'm going to show you will allow you to do that. And all it is, guys, is a simple torch and that. You say, well, what is that? Walmart Gorilla brand. It is the Gorilla glue sticks. And to me, it is the very best glue I've ever used. You can see how much is built up on my can here from years of gluing stuff with them. Versus ferrite, boning, and things of that nature, the reason I like this glue, it has an incredible bond, but it's got a little bit of ply to it when it's fully dry. In other words, it doesn't get rock hard. It's hard, but not super hard. It's not brittle. So it's really shock resistant. Like if you were to hit something or whatnot, it's not going to allow that bond to break. It's a super good glue for inserts and broadheads. And you can adjust them. You can heat them and adjust them. But it is super strong, guys. You'll love it. And it's cheap. So that's what I use, Gorilla. And you don't want to heat it, but very little, very little. I mean, it's so sensitive to heat that you can just barely heat this stuff and put it on, and it's great. You don't have to sit there and just melt it. No, you don't. Okay, so when I take these shafts like this here, first thing I do is I cut my shaft the length that I wanted. My arrow saw is out in the shop because I don't run it inside because of the carbon that blows out of it. I've had enough dealings with carbon and I definitely don't want to breathe that. So I've got my saw outside, so I'll go out and I cut these. I cut my shaft 28.5 inches. Then I glued the Ethics system in. And all I did is take the post, the collar, put them together. Just grab any old field tip laying here. This is a 175 grain tip, which is actually what I would run on there. Go ahead and screw it on. Screw your field tip on there, okay? Then, and I'll show you guys, if this were the other end of the arrow, you see this is a perfect fit. See? Perfect. There it is, perfectly lined up. So all you do when you have your cut in that you're going to put them on, and you fire your glue up, you just heat your glue stick up. You just heat it up just a little bit and go to wiping it on there till you get a good bond. I mean, till you get it covered. Because don't worry about the excess, because what's going to happen, the excess, when you get that good warm glue melted up on there and you put it into your shaft, as it goes up in there, all the excess is going to squeeze out and it's going to come down that sleeve and completely glue that sleeve onto the shaft. And when you get it all the way down, when you push it down, first thing you're going to want to do is just kind of move it around and spin it. Just kind of move your shaft around, put a little pressure on it, spin it till it spins like a top. Hold it for 4 or 5 seconds, let it start cooling down a little bit, be very careful with it. And when it locks in, which is a few seconds, you have a perfectly aligned broadhead. It is going to spin like a top. So these Ethics systems are super easy to deal with, guys. And there you can buy these through Three Rivers. I've got a multitude of them here, any and all sizes, pretty much you can think of, because I use them a lot, because they protect the end of the arrow so incredibly much that you can shoot a brick wall. Not gonna hurt. You may blow the knock off, but you're not gonna hurt that arrow. It's just so protected, it's crazy. But this is the packages that they come in. There again, Three Rivers carries them. When you order them, get them a little bit bigger. If you don't know what the outside diameter of your shafts are, look them up. Go to the website of whatever, be it Easton or Gold Tip, whatever it is. Look up the outside diameter of your arrow. And one little tip, the thing that I do like to do, I like to lightly sand the shaft as I clean them and do all that, because I generally do clean them with acetone, and I'll lightly sand just where that collar is going to go up in there, because I want a really good bite with that glue. You know, it always helps to sand just a little bit with some fine paper. But get your outside diameter of your arrow, whatever it's going to be, get your outside diameter, and buy these things a little bit bigger. In other words, like I said, these are that fit these 204 diameter arrows, or an Axis 5mm, any of the 204s. This set right here fits great, which is a 262. If you look at that, that's a 262. They will fit. Okay. Now you can choose when you're buying them. You can choose what grains you want. If you want 120 grains worth of insert, then you're going to want to get the aluminum post with a stainless sleeve. If you want the full 185 grains of total insert, get the stainless steel post with the aluminum sleeve. That gives you 185. You can still cut it off at the notches. If you'll look and see, both of them are equipped with notches. They have notches, 10 grains per pop. So you can cut these down all the way to 100 grains if you want to, even the heavy ones, and you can cut these down even less. I don't want to cut mine down, and I'll tell you why. Even though you can, and you can adjust that weight any way you want to, and you can cut them off with a Dremel. I don't, because I happen to like very much, if you look at, let me get into this and just show you guys. You look how long that is. That thing is like 3 inches long. By the time you put that in the end of your shaft, and then you put a sleeve on, that post is all the way down this far into your shaft. That is total protection from impact, from breaking. Whereas if you have a very short insert and a long broadhead, that arrow is very prone to break right at that point, okay? So when you use this kind of system where you have a real deep running insert and then a shock collar on top of it, or a sleeve, it is next to impossible to break that arrow. It is just not going to happen. I have never, ever broken one of these with an Ethics system anywhere near the tip. I have had an arrow break off about halfway that maybe didn't get a complete pass through and a deer hit a tree and snap it off toward the back or something, but never close to the front. It just doesn't happen, guys. So that is the ultimate arrow build. Now, they don't have to be airstrikes. Anything you can find that is light, and I'll explain why. Anything you can find that is light grain per inch. And when I say light, even these 340s are only about 8, okay? 400s are 7 and change. When you get an arrow that is around that 7 to 8 grain per inch, that arrow is going to be fast. All your weight's going to be up front, right? And it allows that arrow to recover so fast when it is light on the back end and heavy on the front. It recovers out of your bow extremely fast. And it is a forgiving arrow, and it flies the broadhead so incredibly well. It almost pulls through the air versus an arrow that wants to push. If you compare this to, say, an old school 2213 aluminum arrow or a 2016 or whatever, night and day difference in the trajectory of these arrows. A heavy, slow arrow with a lot of momentum is still going to do what it's going to do, but when you can create an arrow that is as fast as a feather light arrow, that is really fast out of a traditional bow, one that will typically still shoot 180 plus feet per second. Let's say that in a relatively light pound bow. When you can shoot anything in that kind of speed and have that hard of a hit, that much penetration, and the punch that these have, it's a winner. It's just a winner. You don't have to give up trajectory where you can take that 30-yard shot. You don't have to worry about the arrow losing momentum, because when you've got 330 grains on the front of an arrow that's flying at speeds of that nature, that's a whole lot of energy out of a traditional bow. It's as much as you can get. You cannot get a more effective setup. It is not possible from everything I've tested. And believe me, I mean, if you look at the assortments of arrows, there's really no arrow on the planet that I have not built and tried and tested and tinkered and, just to see what they do. And I will tell you, I absolutely believe that these smaller diameter arrows loaded up on the front end out-penetrate and fly about anything. They really do. So guys, that is it. That is the ultimate hunting arrow build. That is the most ultimate that I possibly have come up with, that I can come up with. I have not found anything to beat it. And there again, I've done Axis 5mm like this. I've done lots of different brands. Same setup. But these airstrikes are no doubt my favorite. Yes, they are. Because they, for some reason, have flight characteristics that are better. They really are better than others. And I shared that in an earlier video. Even than some of the Axis shafts that I had tried, and some of the carbon trads and things of that nature, they tend to be a little finicky sometimes when you really load them up on the front end. When you pass 300 grains, they get a little finicky. These don't. Couldn't tell you why. But there's just something about these airstrike shafts that they love to be loaded up on the front. I mean, there's really no limit. By the way, guys, I ran a 200 grain head on here, which 200 grains, 25 more than I had actually, put me at a 650 something grain arrow, and running, way over 350 grains on the front. I literally could not tell any difference. I may even do that. I may run a 200 grain head on this just to do it, because I could not even tell any difference in the flight at all. My point of impact did not change. The arrow still seemed to shoot just as fast, hitting incredibly hard, and man, it was just awesome. Totally awesome, guys. So if you want you a 25% FOC arrow, 25% killer arrow, get you something like this, man. I believe you will be completely blown away by the performance of it, guys. It'll boost your confidence when you hit the woods, because you know that when you get the shot, the arrow is not going to have a problem. It's going to do what it's going to do. Penetration will not be an issue, especially with a good sharp broadhead. And I like shooting these big 3-blade heads, 1.25 inch cut heads, especially when I know I've got enough weight behind them like I've got now. I expect good results out of these. I really do, guys. So anyway, thank you for joining me on Instinctive Addiction Archery. I'm Jeff Phillips, and I pray that everything that I say and do will bring honor and glory to the good Lord that's been so good to me and gives me the ability to do what I love doing. Guys, I just thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed this. If you get bored and want to build you some killer arrows, you can get these through Lancaster. There's lots of places you can still get these shafts. Lancaster Archery does carry the Airstrike shafts in about every size. You can get them through them. The Ethics systems you can buy direct from Ethics. You can also buy them through Three Rivers. Now, Three Rivers does not carry the Airstrike shaft. However, Lancaster does, because this was a compound shaft. It was intended for compound shooters at extreme long distance when it came out and hit the market a couple of years ago. So there are lots of arrows that will work. Just try to keep the GPI as light as you can on your arrows, and it's a 204 inside diameter shaft. So any 204 ID shaft that's running 7 to 8 grains per inch will work fine for you for this kind of setup. And get you some of these Ethics and run whatever head you choose to run, and I'll guarantee you'll be happy. Thank you guys for joining me. God bless you.